I'm going to try to be fast, but that's unlikely. Number 1, 3402. This is just a sentence you have to memorize. 40 days after service is summons, irrespective of joinder issue. Party puts a case on the calendar within 10 days after service with proof of such service. 2 copies of a note of issue with the clerk. So that was A. 3403. Which, if any, of the following cases are entitled to a trial preference? Now, there's 3 of them listed here, and that is true. But there's also some others that you should be aware of, and they're in the book. Off the top of my head, I think one is when one of the parties is the state, and one is a statutory, it says in a statute somewhere, and there's another one that I can't recall right now, but just be aware that it's not just those 3. Oh, and I think the other one is when the, I don't know, maybe somebody can tell me when the other one is. 3403. In general, if the note of issue is filed without a request for a preference, any other party entitled to a preference should make his motion for a preference within 10 days after the filing of the request. So that would be C. The next one, you should just read that. It's 1 year, and it shall be dismissed without cause for neglect to prosecute, and that you don't need an order. The clerk can enter it without an order. 5, not more than 60 days after issue is joined. Plaintiff in a med mal and that other stuff shall file with the clerk a notice of dental, medical, or podiatric malpractice action. So the answer was D for 60 days. 3407. If a party who is terminally ill files a request for expedited preliminary conference, the court shall hold such conference within 20 days after the filing of the request. That's an easy one. 6 people in a civil jury. But apparently you can have 5, but then it has to be unanimous. 4106. Upon the request of the party, 1 or more persons may be selected as alternate jurors. Okay, so this one, you had to do a little bit math, but you could have counted on your fingers because the answer was 9, and most of us have 10. So the answer was 9. The reason the answer is 9 is because the third party plaintiff, who is he also?
The third party defendant gets it.
No, it's the third party plaintiff is the same as the regular defendant. So it's the same person. So if Mary and I are suing each other, and then I sue Meg because I think she's the one who should be paying Mary, there's only 3 of us, but I'm the defendant, I'm also the third party plaintiff. So I don't get an extra 3 challenges just because I got another lawsuit going on. Does everyone understand that? Okay. 4109, using the scenario above, the total number of 3 peremptory challenges for 1 alternate juror is 3, because we are going to each get 1. (4110) A party may challenge an unlimited number of jurors for cause. 5 out of 6, we probably know that by now. Okay, then number 12. 5 is wrong, it's just not in the statute. But the rest of the list, it's all there for you.
What's the remaining answer? C, right?
C. 4102, any party served with a note of issue not containing a jury demand may make a jury demand by serving on all the parties and filing a jury demand within 15 days after service of the note of issue. When I worked in lower civil, you actually counted the days. So this time rule was important. They don't want people to have juries in civil cases. 3211, okay. I am gonna be honest with you, I had like 20 to 30 people ask me about this question that some of them I haven't talked to in a decade. The answer key is correct. If you want later in the hallway after this class, I'll try to explain it to you. But for now, just please memorize the list. In 3211, know that the defenses in 2, 7, and 10 are not waived if you don't put them in a responsive pleading. So you can never waive subject matter jurisdiction, never. The pleading fails to state a cause of action, you do not waive that defense if it's not in your responsive pleading. And the third one is non-joinder, because it might take you 6 months into the case to figure out that this other party should be in the case. So the others are there. What I would do, if you're confused about this, go back and look at it. Look where it says, it's like 5 paragraphs after the list in 3211, where it tells you that 2, 7, and 10, that you're not going to waive those defenses. Again, it is confusing, but if you want, I'll explain it to you after in the hall. 4107, in a civil action, a judge shall be present at the examination of jurors, and the answer is C, on application of either party, on any party. 4111, a court has directed a jury to find a special verdict. In such case, the jury finds the facts only. 3405, the chief judge for the Court of Appeals is authorized to promulgate rules for the arbitration of claims of a sum of money. Select the false statement regarding such rules. And this is mostly a study question. If you cross out the 7,000 in B and make that into a 6,000, then it's a study question, because the rest of them, and then you can cross out false and put true, and then you have a list there to study from. What? So the answer is that B is the incorrect answer, because the amount is wrong.
Everybody stop and look. Be very careful. This kind of questions on the exam. It's asking which is false, not which is true. If this had asked which is true, and A, B, C, and D, and E were 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, all would be true except 2. But this says which is false. Please be very careful when you read some people look at answers before they read questions. Don't do this on this exam. Read the question first and say, are they asking if it's false or true? Are they asking if it's a party or non-party? Always have that clear before you look at the answers.
What helps me when I'm taking these stupid tests is that I will underline if it says true or false, or circle it so that I don't forget, because this question I originally was going to do as a 1, 2, 3, and 4, but not 5, but because it's just less typing to do which is false, and you're still getting the same information. And also, this is kind of a weird one with the arbitration things. So, and it's also weird because the chief judge of the Court of Appeals, he really doesn't seem to have a lot of roles. It usually says the chief administrator, so that's another reason why that's on there, so that you know that it's somebody else for once doing it. 4109, a court, okay, this one you should read, and the only people that have to be there are the court, the kid, and the court reporter, period. Even though, yeah, the child's attorney is usually in it, that's not what it says in the book, so it's the court, the kid, and the reporter.
4019.
Oh, and thank you. It's 4019, typo there. Sorry about that.
By the way, if anybody wants to know what's the reason for that, it's so if there's an appeal, there is a record of what the child told the judge and vice versa.
I'm not totally sure if this is on the test, but it is definitely in the civil rules. So that's the reason why I didn't take it off, because I believe it's in the civil rules. 3211. An objection that basically the service was bad. The objecting party does not move for judgment on that ground within 60 days, then he waives the objection, unless the court extends the time upon the ground of undue hardship. That was just looking for a time rule, but there's a lot of information in that question. And that question does not apply to anybody that works in housing court knows this, real property actions and proceeding law. 3212. Any party may move for summary judgment in any action after issue is joined.
Stop. Does everybody know when issue was joined?
Answer,
Generally, that
notice of
means
appearance,
the answer is served.
or a notice of appearance. And we're making a motion having the effect of extending the time to answer.
Basically, it's usually when the
But it's usually when the answer is served. 3212. A court may set a date after which no motion for summary judgment may be made, such date being no earlier than 30 days after filing of the note of issue. And then if no date is set, the rule is 120 days. I think he went over this last time. I'm not going to spend any more time on it. 3215, this is the 1 year thing. That's why the answer is none of the above. The answer was 1 year. 3222, any action. Now, I was nice and put accept matrimonial in bold, but OCA is not that nice. So whenever you see something that says accept on the test, I would suggest, as long as they're still letting us write on it, underline that and know what exception they're talking about. May be commenced by filing an act. This is about an action on submitted facts, and you can just read it. 3217, this is just asking for a 20-day rule. That's just memorization. 3219, at any time not later than 10 days before trial, any party against whom a cause of action based upon a contract, express or implied, as a, okay, that might be, what's the, is asserted. Okay, so it, you can change that, please. I knew there was a typo in here, at least one of them. Asserted. And against whom a separate judgment may be taken, may without court order deposit an amount and serve the written tender of payment to satisfy the claim. 3222, with regard to actions on submitted facts, I made this question, I don't remember the answer.
Which of the following?
Oh, okay. The reason the answer is E is the reason E is false is because the court can also dismiss the case. So whenever it's saying something about the court shall do something or shall this, and there's no exception in there, you got to really be sure, because there's so many times where it's going to say, well, except for good cause, except for this reason. So when it says the court shall do something, just make sure you really know that that's the answer. And if you're not sure, you're more likely to guess right if you think that there's another exception in there. So the reason this was wrong is because the court can either dismiss the case or allow for the filing of an additional statement. And it was incomplete. 3409, in every dental, medical, or podiatric malpractice action, the court shall hold a mandatory settlement conference within 45 days after the filing of the note of issue and certificate of readiness. There's a big incentive, as you could see, to settle med mals. They don't want them going to trial. 3408. This question, before I read this question, I just want you to be aware that in Rule 202.12, the time rule is different. So if they ask you on the test about this and they put in the question, the CPLR 3408, the answer is going to be 90 days for the second part of the question. And if they're in the civil rules part of the question, the answer is 150 days. Hopefully they'll just avoid that because it might be challengeable if they don't put this where you are. And this is that if the residential foreclosure defendant shows up with no lawyer, the court has to treat him that he made a motion to proceed as a poor person. I don't think I've ever seen that anywhere else in the CPLR. 3212. E, in which, if any of the following actions, may the court not grant summary judgment in favor of the non-moving party. And it's a matrimonial action, and that means it's divorce, annulment, declaration, yada, yada.
Okay, I want you to stop for a second and look up. This used to be important, really important. It's not important anymore, really, because we now have, in effect, no-fault divorce. But you have to realize, for a very long period in New York, to get a divorce, you had to have fault grounds, you know, cruelty and all those lists. And there were cases where people's marriage was dead, and then one party wanted to remarry someone else, but the other